Hey everyone, again it's Joe, and I'm just doing the handheld thing. I can see why this has a stand to go on, but we're going to continue with those curling rocks questions, and I'm going to just show that one. What is the final speed of the shooter? In other words, M1. We're talking about M1. We got the angle, and now I want to know what the speed was. Well, remember that we had um, triangle here, 8 kilogram meters per second. Going this way, we had 6.2 kilogram meters going this way. I'll put that in there like that. And of course, that's a right angle. And if we want to determine the momentum of the shooter rock, it would be 10.1 kilogram meters per second. Now, I want to know what is the final speed of the shooter. Well, since the final momentum of the shooter is 10.1, so we've got momentum is equal to mass times velocity. We already know it's 10.1, and that's equal to 20 V. So let's cross these 20s away, divide it out the other side, and you'll have V is equal to, now depending on how you're carrying your decimals and all that kind of stuff, you'll get V is equal to 0.50 meters per second. What is the change in momentum of the second stone? In other words, delta P2. Well, the change in momentum, delta P2, we know that the change in anything represents delta P2 is equal to P2 final minus P2 initial. And in this case, we know that P2 initial was 0. That crosses off. And P2 final was exactly what we said a little bit earlier, and that was 16 kilogram meters per second. Kilogram meters per second. And we know that it was 30 degrees south of east. What is the change in momentum of the shooter? This one has several different solutions, but I'm going to use Newton's third law on this one, and that is that the change in momentum of the shooter is just opposite to the change in momentum of the target. So what is the opposite of this value? Well, the opposite of this value is, I'm going to say by Newton's third law. By Newton's third law, it's going to be 16 kilogram meters per second. Now, what's the opposite of this? Well, it's still going to be 16, but it's going to be 30 degrees. What's the opposite of south of east? It's going to be north of west. And I really like that question because it can be done several different ways. And if you can think of another way to do it, that would be great. Okay, so what is the impulse applied to the shooter? It sounds to me like that's a different question, just the way it's worded. But guess what? It's not. The impulse applied to the shooter is just what we solved up here. Impulse is the change in momentum. So if impulse is the change in momentum, this just looks like a different question, but it's not really. Okay, so what is the impulse applied to the shooter? Same answer as that, 16 kilogram meters per second, 30 degrees north of west. And yeah, it looks like my camera doesn't want to stay focused anymore. I'll just try to write it down and then I'll point at it when I'm done, okay? So I'll raise it up like this maybe. There we are, okay. 16 kilograms meter per second, 30 degrees north of west. Okay, so that's all. It's about the lingo and the language we use for a question. Sometimes a question looks completely different than it really is. Okay, so we'll leave it at that, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks. See ya.